Hello and welcome back to our podcast, Healing Our Community with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean.
And the podcast is about having real conversations about mental health brought to you, Delta County. Today's episode, we're talking about the balancing act. We're talking about a lot of family dynamics, which is something it's really important to talk about. One thing I wanted to mention is that we got some feedback from our podcast last week that we filmed at TCR, right? And that was that every single one of those cognitive distortions could be its own episode. And that's absolutely true because, and we apologize, we had to go through it really quickly, for everybody. But today we're going to kind of delve into family dynamics and specifically the dynamics of a family that has a special needs child, right? So there's a special needs child. There's also another child that doesn't have special needs, and then parents, that are just trying to hold it together, right? And some of the struggles that they go through. We're looking to just kind of, first of all, normalize the struggles that they're going to be having. And then also talk about some types of solutions that they can.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say is people who are different actually help us grow in a really cool way. And so, when I was a kid, there weren't so many diagnoses and, so people were just, oh, that's Jimmy. Jimmy's just that way, and it was a lot more kind of like just in the yard taking care of things.
Well, it was part of the community. And
it was much smaller.
And there was more of a helpful community back in the day as opposed to, and we've talked about this in past podcasts, is that, the community has really disintegrated or thinned out, over the years, and especially in the cities and more urban areas. But it's starting to happen in rural areas too, especially because we're all spread out. There's more isolation.
And any type of special needs means you don't fit in the box, right? And we just have the box. And so we have what fits in the box and what fits out of the box in terms of what the expectations are in school, in sports, and things like that. So if your kid is outside of that box, we now call it something. We have labels for those things. And we have lots of things that people do for that, which is part of the burden and stress of, the OT and the, all the things that you do to help kids like that.
If you're in a community that has those kinds of resources, because in rural America, there's really, those resources are few and far between. Yeah. Right. And, just have to say, it doesn't matter what the resources are out there. Please make sure you vet, the resources and, thoroughly vet them to see how much experience they have in working with, your special needs child. But what we're talking about today is really the impact, the overall impact on the family. Maybe you'll find a resource or provider out there that's going to work with your special needs child, but there's not much out there that works with the family and the impact. When we work with a family, and we have for decades in our practice in Chicago, the family is seen as a system. So every member of that system impacts the entire system. So if one person has an issue, the entire system is impacted by it.
I like the analogy of raisins and Jell-O. And if you wiggle one raisin, all the other raisins are going to wiggle.
Have you ever had raisins in Jell-O?
I don't want to. Doesn't sound delicious.
I've never had raisins in Jell-O.
Yeah, okay, a walnut or
I don't think I would
pineapple or something. Same concept. Yeah.
So systems approach. That is kind of what we talk about when we're working with families. And specifically, this system that we're talking about is a system that has a special needs child. There's another child that does not have those same challenges. And then the parents are trying to figure things out and find the balance. So that, you know, what we're talking about here is an emotional economy, that there's never enough to go around. Right? It's just so much limited
and we
energy.
hear this in most families,
Yeah.
most couples with little kids, because we lack community, we lack getting a break and all those kind of things. So that is a challenge in and of itself. And now when you add special needs, now there's even less.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge just for, you know, young families today. Now let's add second marriage to the mix. Let's add special needs child to the mix, right? Let's add the lack of maybe family support to the mix. And so you see how just that, you know, if it was just the two of you before you had kids, you can ease into adding another family member and having to spread out your resources and time and energy. But if, like in today's day and age where there are second marriages, it's boom, instant family. So it's now this balancing act that families have to figure out.
Well, if you think about a couple falling in love, they spend usually a pretty intense 9 months to 2 years just bonding and creating their life together. And now you already have a third or fourth or fifth person in the mix that is competing for that time and those resources. And whatever dynamic is of a single parent child situation, which we were in when we got married.
I was going to say, you know, we had that situation when we got married, you know, instant family, as you were a single mom at the time. And that was quite a challenge.
Yeah,
right?
It almost broke us up.
It was quite stressful, stressful, right?
And you're coming in with a 10-year-old and you've never parented. So you didn't get to start at the infant.
And you have the 10-year-old, and then trying to figure out how to be.
You're not starting with a baby that doesn't
an instant parent, right?
Yet.
Right. So, I mean, when we're talking about a family system where there is a child with special needs, and then the other child does not have that challenge, what that creates is a concept called glass children. Okay. And I'm sorry. So glass children, so this would be, there's a strain that is placed on the child that doesn't have any of the challenges, because a lot of the parents' resources are going to the child with special needs. So that other child feels invisible, feels like they can't be a problem. They can't add to the burden that their parents are already dealing with. You know, they hide their own struggles and challenges and deal with it on their own.
I would imagine that the parent would maybe even feel guilty if there's usually their special needs kid, they're spending a lot of time dealing with problems. And then to go have fun with your other kids that they can contain themselves, they can do normal things, and you can take them out and have fun with them, probably feels guilty.
Yeah. That's, and the guilt trap, right?
There we go.
You know, and, you know, parents have to try to work on letting go of this perfectionistic view of the family, that they have to try to maintain this perfect family image. And it's not possible. It doesn't exist. Right. And so when you're trying to compare yourself to some type of unrealistic expectation, that is totally when you're going to feel guilty.
Do you remember that movie we watched with the kid that had Tourette's? What was that called?
I forgot the name of that.
There's a really good movie about that, and it shows his struggles as a little kid, and he has these outbursts, and people think he's being disrespectful or attention seeking or whatever, and he gets in trouble for it all the time, and he really had no control over it. And that was a good movie to kind of highlight that type of disorder. Yeah.
The couple strain. So let's talk about kind of what the strain is that's placed on the couple. So, you know, a couple goes from working on their relationship and being, you know, partners and, you know, intimate partners. And then they go into becoming like, you know, they're trying to manage a company or something. You know, it's like co-admin type of, you know, approach.
Yeah. I think when we started dating, it was probably within the first month you were already watching Alec before like when because I was in school
Mm-hmm.
and I'd go take a class and he'd stay home with you. And like, that was pretty quick into this relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. So it shifts the relationship from, that's what I was trying to go for, co-admins, from an intimate relationship to co-admins.
Yep. Doing all the logistical stuff. And
right. And you become like business partners, basically. And what does that do to the relationship, the intimate relationship? Well, it puts it on the back burner.
Yeah.
Right. And so now you're shifting your time and energy towards being, successful co-admins from being intimate partners. And that intimate relationship takes a toll.
And I would say that's true for all couples, even without special needs, but it's extra difficult with special needs.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there's a sense of grief.
Yes.
That couples experience.
Yeah.
In going through that, right? It's like a lot of couples that we meet with, many times they say, we'd like to go back to the way things were.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
We say, if you have a magic wand, everything could be the way you want it to be. They say, we wish we'd go back to the way things were when it was just us as a couple. And, that's where that grief comes in, that they're grieving the loss of that intimate relationship, And what does that lead to? I mean, it leads to resentment.
For sure.
Yeah. Resentment towards your partner.
Because when you're in pain, you tend to blame.
Yeah.
So if there's nothing you can do about it, you want to find someone else you can pin it on. And it's usually going to be your partner.
Yeah.
Or the kid.
And, sometimes there's an imbalance where one partner is doing more than the other.
Right.
And so, maybe because the other one is working more to make money, to support the medical bills and all that stuff. So, there's resentment going back and forth for different reasons.
Right.
Right. And that just, it erodes then that intimate relationship that they have. So
one thing that you had on your notes that I don't think we talked about was finding a babysitter, finding someone to watch your child when they have special needs. I remember having a client whose little 2-year-old had diabetes. And she was so grateful that she found someone who was also a caretaker that had diabetes, that knew what to look for and how to manage. And like, how scary is that? And I remember her going away for the weekend for the first time in a long time and being really grateful that she felt really safe, that her daughter was with someone that she could really trust. And I think that's an extra big challenge that you have when you have special needs, like who's going to care for them? And sometimes it doesn't go away just because they grow up.
Right.
Like they could be 15 and they still need care. They still need someone watching out for them. You can't just leave them alone like a regular 15-year-old.
Yeah, especially if you have that guilt also.
Right.
So now you feel guilty about leaving your kid in the hands of someone else if you feel like you're not spending enough time with them. So if you get caught in that guilt loop, that can really keep you stuck.
Yeah.
Right. And so really challenging yourself to find some help would be very important, especially for the kid who doesn't have those special needs challenges.
Right.
Right. So that brings up the 15-minute protected time rule. And so, what this means is that parents need to challenge themselves to find 15 minutes of protected time for the child that doesn't have special needs issues. Okay. And that's a time when their siblings should not be discussed. It's a time that they are spending with them.
So you're talking about their other children, not their partner.
Their other children. Right. Right. And this can be applied to their relationship, their intimate relationship too.
And I find it interesting that, if studies are showing it's 15 minutes, that's not that much.
No.
And that's, I think, where we get overwhelmed in the same way. Like if we go on a diet, we think like, oh, I ate a donut, so I should just blow it everything. Like it's 15 minutes. No one's asking you to do like separate vacations or a full day, or 15 minutes isn't even like going out to eat. It's a small amount of time. Yeah. And what we know about adult relationships is healthy adult relationships spend 5.5 hours a week. There's 168 hours in a week. I don't know what the percentage of that is, but it's very tiny.
Yeah.
And those little tiny investments in our relationships, whether it's our partner or our children, it doesn't take that much, but it does take conscious, deliberate effort.
Yeah, 5.5. That's what we ask couples when we sit down with them. We ask, how much quality time are you spending with each other on a weekly basis?
Mhm.
Just the two of you, no screens. And we're looking for that 5.5 hour mark, because that's what happy, healthy couples report, spending that minimum of 5.5 hours.
And the kids it's only an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah. And how many couples that we
Right.
encounter don't even spend 1 hour?
And that's rejuvenating for the adult as well, to not discuss this all the time.
For sure. Yeah.
And I'm going to say this, it might not be a very popular position, but I'm going to say this. And, we raised a child who had ADHD and didn't fit in the box. And I would say own it. Like, stop thinking what your life was going to be. And I remember saying to him all the time, you might not do well here in your life, but when you grow up and you have control over your life and how you structure it and how you do things, you're going to be okay. And my main goal with him, and yours might have been a little different, but my main goal with him was just to keep his self-esteem intact so that he had that confidence to go out into the world. And he's married, he has a child, he's doing fabulous.
Yeah. And my goal was consistency. Was, in a world of ADHD, consistency is key.
Well, and he never had a male role model that was consistent.
Consistency and dependability. And so that was the goal. And so that kind of brings up the concept here that we talked about, which is victim mentality. What was that, 2 podcasts ago or something like that, where, stop asking the why. Why are we going through this?
Yeah.
Why is our life like this? Just radical acceptance is that this is how things are. So how do we do things?
And of this person who is normally this person. Just because they're outside of the box doesn't mean they're not okay. And to love them as they are and not try to make them be something that fits into something that they're never going to fit into. And, when you do that, they can really shine. They can really shine. I remember a friend of mine had a child with cerebral palsy. And when I knew him, he was about 13 years old. And he was developmentally about 6 months old. So he was in diapers. He was bottle fed. And he was bigger, because his body was still growing. So it was harder to take care of, an 80-pound child than a, 10-pound or 12-pound kid when they're babies. And I'll tell you, this kid never stopped smiling. He was this bright ray of sunshine when you walked in the room. And I don't know what was actually happening for him inside, but he was a happy guy. And he brought that simple joy and pleasure to the world. And you would just look at him and all your problems would go away, because you're like, all right, we're doing this, and so own it.
Yeah. I mean, in past podcasts, I talked about my cousin who, raised her son who was a mute autistic. And for a long time there was chaos, until they really figured out a groove, and there can be happiness through the chaos.
Love.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on our podcast, Healing Our Community. The whole premise of this podcast is to have open communication and real talks about mental health. Change can only happen if we have real talks about mental health. So let's just keep talking, Delta County.
You got it.